Good morrow, scholars. Now, I know I've been gone for 2 days, and I apologize for that. I was very sick yesterday and the day before, but I had to go to work because I needed the money. I'm feeling a lot better today, and I'm hoping that I can finally get my taxes done because the website they sent me to isn't working for some reason or another. And I'm fairly certain they just didn't feel like looking for my W-2 anyway. So I'm probably going to try and go back up there later today and pick it up before they leave. Seriously, this is getting ridiculous. Anywho, we are on Chapter 7 of Star Wars, Heir to the Empire. Let's see. Where was I? I hadn't started the chapter. I don't know. Anyway, it was more a feeling than anything approaching an actual word, but it echoed through Luke's mind as clearly as if he'd heard it shouted, "Help!" He spun around, the ancient tapestry he'd been studying forgotten as his Jedi senses flared into combat readiness. Around him, the large top-floor tower room was, as it had been a minute earlier, deserted, except for a handful of bims strolling among the huge wall tapestries and relic cases. No danger here, at least nothing immediate. "What is it?" he sent back, starting for the next room and the staircase leading down. He caught a quick vision from Leia's mind, a picture of alien figures, and a vivid impression of a contracting noose. "Hang on," he told her, "I'm coming." All but running now, he ducked through the doorway to the staircase room, grabbing the jamb? I don't know. That's not a word I've ever seen before. To help with his turn, and braked into an abrupt halt. Standing between him and the stairway was a loose semicircle of seven silent gray figures. Luke froze, his hand still uselessly gripping the door jamb, as half a galaxy away from the lightsaber on his belt. What? He had no idea what the sticks were his assailants were pointing at him, but he had no desire to find out the hard way, not unless he absolutely had to. "What do you want?" he asked aloud. The alien in the center of the semicircle, the leader, Luke guessed, gestured with his stick. Luke glanced over his shoulder into the room he'd just left. "You want me to go back in there?" he asked. The leader gestured again, and this time Luke saw it, the small, almost insignificant tactical error. I'm sure he'll tell me in a minute. Or was I? "All right," he said, as soothingly as possible. "No problem." Keeping his eyes on the aliens and his hands away from his lightsaber, he began to back up. They herded him steadily back across the room toward another archway, and a room he hadn't gotten to before Leia's emergency call had come. "If you just tell me what you want, I'm sure we could come to some sort of agreement," Luke suggested as he walked. Faint, scuffling sounds told him that there were still some bims wandering around, presumably the reason the aliens hadn't already attacked. "I would hope we could at least talk about it. There's no particular reason why any of you has to be hurt." Reflexively, the leader's left thumb moved. Not much, but Luke was watching, and it was enough. A thumb trigger, then. "If you have some business with me, I'm willing to talk," he continued. "You don't need my friends in the marketplace for that." He was almost to the archway now. A couple more steps to go if they just hold off shooting him that long. And then he was there, the carved stone looming over him. Now where, he asked, forcing his muscles to relax. This was it. Again, the leader gestured with his stick. At midway through the motion, for a single instant, the weapon was pointed not at Luke, but at two of his own companions. And reaching out through the force, Luke triggered the thumb switch. There was a loud, sharp hiss. As the stick bucked in its owner's hands, and what looked like a fine spray shot out at the end. Luke didn't wait to see what exactly the spray did. The maneuver had bought him maybe half a second of confusion, and he couldn't afford to waste any of it. Throwing himself back and to the side, he did a flip into the room behind him, angling to get it to the slight protection afforded by the wall beside the doorway. It's been a while. What is it, Iggy? Oh, hey. Can you see him? See? He's such a silly little thing. He doesn't like Kitten. He doesn't seem to mind Boots, who's over there in the windowsill. Anyway. Where was I? He just barely made it. I wouldn't have, that's for sure. Have you seen me? Oh, also, what do you think of this Haunter t-shirt? It says Haunter used Destiny Bond, but it's kind of hard to tell. Anyway. Where was I? Even as he cleared the archway, there was a stuttering salvo of sharp hisses, and as he flipped back to his feet, he saw that the door jamb had grown strange, semi-solid tendrils of some thin, translucent material. Another tendril shot through the doorway as he hastily backed further away, sweeping in a spiral curve that seemed to turn from fine mist to liquid stream to solid cylinder even as it curved. His lightsaber was in his hand now, igniting with a snap hiss of its own. They'd be through that doorway in seconds, he knew, all efforts at subtlety abandoned, and when they came... He clenched his teeth, a memory of his brief skiff battle encounter with Boba Fett flashing through his mind. Wrapped in the bounty hunter's smart rope, he'd escaped only by snapping the cable with a deflected blaster shot. But here, there would be no blasters to try that trick with. For that matter, he wasn't absolutely sure what his lightsaber could do directly against the sprays. It would be like trying to cut through a rope that was continually recreating itself. Or rather, like trying to cut 7 such ropes. He could hear their footsteps now, sprinting toward his room, even as the spiraling tendril sweeping the doorway made sure he stayed too far back to ambush them as they came through it. A standard military technique played out with the kind of precision that showed he wasn't dealing with amateurs. He raised the lightsaber to on-guard position, risking a quick look around. The room was decorated like all the others he had seen on this floor, with ancient wall tapestries and other relics, no real cover anywhere. His eyes flicked across the wall, searching for the exit that by implication had to be here somewhere. But the action was so much useless reflex. Wherever the exit was, it was almost certainly too far away to do him any good. The hiss of the spray stopped, and he turned back just in time to see the aliens charge into the room. They spotted him, spun around to bring their weapons to bear, and reaching up with the force, Luke ripped one of the tapestries down from the wall beside him and brought it down on top of them. It was a trick that only a Jedi could have pulled off, and it was a trick that, by all rights, ought to have worked. All 7 of the aliens were in the room by the time he got the tapestry loose, and all 7 were beneath it as it began its fall. But by the time it landed into a huge wrinkled pile on the floor, all 7 had somehow managed to back completely out of its way. From behind the heap came the sharp hiss of their weapons, and Luke ducked back involuntarily before he realized the webbing sprays weren't coming anywhere near him. Instead, the misty tendrils were sweeping outward, shooting around and past the down tapestry to crisscross the walls. His first thought was that the weapons must have gone off accidentally, jostled or bumped as the aliens tried to get out from under the falling tapestry. But a split second later he realized the truth, that they were deliberately webbing the other tapestries into place on the walls to prevent him from trying the same trick twice. Belatedly, Luke tugged at the heaped tapestry, hoping to sweep them back with it, and found that it too was now solidly webbed in place. The spraying ceased, and a single dark eye poked cautiously around the tapestry mountain, and with a strange sort of sadness Luke realized that he had no longer any choices left. There was now only one way to end this if Han and Leia were to be saved. He locked his lightsaber on and let his mind relax, reaching out with Jedi senses toward the 7 figures, forming their image in his mind's eye. The alien, watching him, brought his weapon around the edge of the tapestry, and reaching back over his left shoulder, Luke hurled his lightsaber with all his strength. The blade scythed toward the edge of the tapestry, spinning through the air like some strange and fiery predator. The alien saw it, reflexively ducked back, and died as the lightsaber sliced through the tapestry and cut him in half. The others must have realized in that instant that they too were dead. But even then they didn't give up. Howling a strangely chilling wail, they attacked, 4 throwing themselves around the sides of the barrier, the other 2 accidentally leaping straight up to try to shoot over it. It made no difference. Guided by the Force, the spinning lightsaber cut through their ranks in a twisting curve, striking each of them in turn. A heartbeat later, it was all over. Luke took a shuddering breath. He'd done it. Not the way he'd wanted to, but he'd done it. Now, he could only hope he'd done it in time, calling the lightsaber back to his hand on a dead run. He sprinted past the crumpled alien bodies and stretched out again through the Force. Leia? The decorative columns flanking the downward ramp were visible just beyond the next row of booths. Beside him, Han felt Leia twitch. He's free, she said. He's on his way. Great, Han muttered. Great, let's hope our pals don't find out before he gets here. The words were barely out of his mouth when, in what looked like complete unison, the circle of aliens raised their... I can't remember what I said. Stokely, I guess, is what I said, sticks, and started pushing their way through the milling crowd of bims. Too late, Han gritted. Here they come. Leia gripped his arm. Should I try to take their weapons away from them? You'll never get all 11, Han told her, looking around desperately for inspiration. His eyes fell on a nearby table loaded with jewelry display boxes, and he had it. Maybe. Leia, that jewelry over there. Grab some of it. He sensed her throw a startled look up at him. What? Just do it, he hissed, watching the approaching aliens. Grab it and throw it to me. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw one of the smaller display boxes stir as she strained to establish a grip on it. Then, with a sudden lurch, it leaped toward him, slapping into his hands and scattering small necklaces to the ground before he managed to get hold of the rest. And abruptly, the raucous conversational hum of the marketplace was split by a piercing shriek. Han turned toward it just in time to see the owner of the pilfered merchandise stabbing 2 fingers toward him. Han, he heard Leia shout over the scream. Get ready, he shouted back, and was literally bowled off his feet as a yellow wave of enraged bims leapt on top of him, knocking the accused shoplifter to the ground. And with their bodies forming a barrier between him and the suckling sticks, he dropped the jewelry and grabbed for his comlink. Chewie, he bellowed over the din. Sound. Just like loud. Never mind. Oh, okay, cool. I have a special surprise for you, hopefully later today. If you guys have been here since I started the channel, well, not since I started, but a while back I tried to do something special for the channel with my friends, and I think today might be that day, finally. Anyway, where was I? Luke heard the shriek even from the top tower floor. What? And from the sudden turmoil in Leia's mind, it was instantly clear that he would never make it to the marketplace in time. He skidded to a halt, mind racing. Across the room was a large open window faced the open domed structure, but 5 floors was too far even for a Jedi to safely leap. Oh, real quick. One of the things that Timothy Zahn especially didn't like about how, authors were going with Luke and the Force abilities is that they made him too overpowered, and they were giving him too many powers and basically turning him into like a Superman sort of a thing. And he didn't like that because it went against the idea of the Jedi. So he did his best to kind of keep everyone from going too far. Anyway, he glanced back to the room he just left, searching for possibilities, and his eye fell on the end of one of the aliens' weapons, just visible through the archway. It was a long shot, but it was as good a chance as he was going to get. Reaching out through the Force, he called the weapon flying to his hand, studying its controls as he ran to the window. They were simple enough: spray profile and pressure, plus the thumb trigger, setting for the narrowest spray and the highest pressure. He braced himself against the side of the window, aimed for the marketplace's partial dome covering, and fired. The stick kicked harder against his shoulder than he'd expected it to as the spray shot out, but the results were all he could have hoped for. The front end of the arching tendril struck the roof, forming a leisurely sort of pile as more of the semi-solid spray pushed forward to join it. Luke held the switch down for a count of 5, then eased up, keeping a firm force grip on the near end of the tendril to prevent it falling away from the stick. Sorry. Where was I? He gave it a few seconds to harden before touching it tentatively with a finger, gave it a few seconds more to make sure it was solidly attached to the marketplace roof. Then, taking a deep breath, he grabbed his makeshift rope with both hands and jumped. A tornado of air blew at him, tugging at his hair and clothes as he swung down and across. Below, and partway across the top level, he could see the mass of yellow-clad bims and the handful of gray figures struggling to get past them to Han and Leia. There was a flicker of light, visible even in the bright sunshine, and one of the bims slumped to the ground, stunned or dead. Luke couldn't tell which. The floor was rushing up at him, and he braced himself to land. And with a roar that must have rattled windows for blocks around, the Millennium Falcon screamed by overhead. The shockwave threw Luke's landing off, sending him sprawling across the floor and into 2 of the bims. But even as he rolled back up to his feet, he realized that Chewbacca's arrival couldn't have been better timed. Barely 10 meters away, the 2 alien attackers nearest him had turned their attention upward, their weapons poised to ensnare the Falcon when it returned. Snatching his lightsaber from his belt, Luke leaped over a half-dozen bystanding bims, cutting both attackers down before they even knew he was there. From overhead came another roar, but this time Chewbacca didn't simply fly the Falcon past the marketplace. Instead, forward maneuvering jets blasting, he brought it to a hard stop. Hovering directly over his beleaguered companions, swivel blaster extended from the ship's underside, he opened fire. The bims weren't stupid. Whatever Han and Leia had done to stir up the Hornet's nest, the Hornets themselves clearly had no desire to get shot at from the sky. In an instant, the rolling yellow mass dissolved, the bims abandoning their attack and streaming away in terror from the Falcon. Forcing his way through the crowd, using the bims for visual cover as much as he could, Luke started around the attacker's circle. Between his lightsaber and the Falcon's swivel blaster, they made a very fast, very clean sweep of it. "You," Luke said with a shake of his head, "are a mess." "I'm sorry, Master Luke," 3PO apologized, his voice almost inaudible beneath the layers of hardened spray net that covered much of his upper body like some bizarre sort of gift wrapping. "I seem to always be causing you trouble." "That's not true, and you know it," Luke soothed him, considering the small collection of solvents arrayed in front of him on the Falcon's lounge table. So far, none of the ones he tried had been even marginally effective against the webbing. "You've been a great help to all of us over the years. You just have to learn when to duck." Besides Luke, R2 twittered something. It's funny because this came out in like the 90s. "No, Captain Solo did not tell me to duck," 3PO told the squat droid stiffly. "What he said was, 'Get ready to duck.' I should think the difference would be apparent even to you." R2 beeped something else. 3PO ignored it. "Well, let's try this one," Luke suggested, picking up the next solvent in the line. He was hunting for a clean cloth among the pile of rejects when Leia came into the lounge. "How is he?" she asked, walking over and peering at 3PO. "He'll be all right," Luke assured her. "He may have to stay like this until we get back to Coruscant, though. Han told me these Stokely sticks, I don't know, are used mostly by big game hunters on out-of-the-way planets, and the spray net they use is a pretty exotic mixture." He indicated the discarded solvent bottles. "Maybe the bims can suggest something," Leia said, picking up one of the bottles and looking at its label. "We'll ask them when we get back down." Luke frowned at her. "We're going back down?" She frowned at him in turn. We have to, Luke. You know that. This is a diplomatic mission, not a pleasure cruise. It's considered bad form to pull out right after one of your ships has just shot up a major local marketplace. I would think that the BIMs would consider themselves lucky that none of their people got killed in the process, Luke pointed out, particularly when what happened was at least partly their fault. You can't blame a whole society for the actions of a few individuals, Leia said rather severely. Luke thought, especially not when a single political maverick has simply made a bad decision. A bad decision? Luke snorted. Is that what they're calling it? That's what they're calling it, Leia nodded. Apparently, the BIM who led us into the marketplace trap was bribed to take us there. He had no idea what was going to happen, though. And I suppose he had no idea what the stuff he gave the chief negotiator... wait, what? And I suppose he had no idea what the stuff he gave the chief negotiator would do either? Leia shrugged. Actually, there's still no hard evidence that he or anyone else poisoned the negotiator, he said. Though under the circumstances, they're willing to concede that's a possibility. Luke made a face. Generous of them. What does Han have to say about us putting back down? Han doesn't have any choice in the matter, Leia said firmly. This is my mission, not his. That's right, Han agreed, stepping into the lounge. Your mission, but my ship. Leia stared at him, a look of disbelief on her face. You didn't. She breathed. I sure did, he told her calmly, dropping into one of the seats across the lounge. I sure did, he told her calmly, dropping into one of the seats across the lounge. We made the jump to light speed about 2 minutes ago. Next stop, Coruscant. Han! She flared, as angry as Luke had ever seen her. I told the BIMs we were coming right back down. And I told them there'd be a short delay, Han countered. Like long enough for us to collect a squadron of X-Wings or maybe a Star Cruiser to bring back with us. And what if you've offended them, Leia snapped. Do you have any idea how much groundwork went into this mission? Yeah, as it happens, I do, Han said, his voice hardening. I also have a pretty good idea what could happen if our late pals with the Stokely Sticks brought friends... if our late friends with the things brought friends with them. For a long minute, Leia stared at him, and Luke sensed the momentary anger fading from her mind. You still shouldn't have left without consulting me first, she said. You're right, Han conceded, but I didn't want to take the time. If they did have friends, those friends probably had a ship. He tried a tentative smile. There wasn't time to discuss it in committee. Leia smiled lopsidedly in return. I am not a committee, she said wryly. And with that, the brief storm passed, and the tension was gone. Someday, Luke promised himself, he would get around to asking one of them just what that particular private joke of theirs referred to. I feel like I know what it is. Was it in one of the prior Star Wars videos? Let me know down in the comments if you... Oh, I'm almost done. Cool. I get so giddy over the silliest of things. Don't ever change. I learned that lesson too late. If something brings you great joy and you take joy in weird things, keep it as long as you can. Don't let someone take it from you. I don't mean like, say, you know, with my lightsabers, don't let them take it. I mean, don't let that joy be ruined by somebody. Unless you're doing something harmful to yourself or others, in which case I implore you to seek help. Anyway, that took a turn. Speaking of our pals, he said, did either of you happen to ask the BIMs who or what they were? I don't know if that was Han, since he was the last one talking, or Luke, since he was the last one thinking. The BIMs didn't know, Leia said, shaking her head. I've certainly never seen anything like them before. We can check the Imperial archives when we get back to Coruscant, Han said, feeling gingerly at one cheek where a bruise was already becoming visible. There'll be a record of them somewhere, unless, Leia said quietly, there's something the Empire found out in the unknown regions. Luke looked at her. You think the Empire was behind this? Who else could it have been, she said. The only question is why. Well, whatever the reason, they're going to be disappointed, Han told her, getting back to his feet. I'm going back to the cockpit to see if I can model our course a little more. No point in taking chances. A memory flashed through Luke's mind. Han and the Falcon sweeping right through the middle of that first Death Star battle to shoot Darth Vader's fighters off his back. Hard to imagine Han Solo not wanting to take chances, he commented. Han leveled a finger at him. Yeah, well, before you get cocky, try to remember that the people I'm protecting are you, your sister, your niece, and your nephew. That make any difference? Luke smiled. Touché, he admitted, saluting with an imaginary lightsaber. And speaking of that, Han added, isn't it about time Leia had a lightsaber of her own? I have 2 thumbs up in case you can't tell. Luke shrugged. I can make her one any time she's ready, he said, looking at his sister. Leia? Leia hesitated. I don't know, she confessed. I've never really felt comfortable with the things. She looked at Han. But I suppose I ought to make the effort. I think you should, Luke agreed. Your talents may lie along a different direction, but you should still learn all of the basics. As far as I can tell, nearly all of the Jedi of the Old Republic carried lightsabers, even those who were primarily healers or teachers. She nodded. All right, she said. As soon as my workload lightens up a little. Before your workload lightens, Han insisted. I mean that, Leia. All these wonderful diplomacy skills of yours aren't going to do you or anyone else any good if the Empire locks you away in an interrogation room somewhere. Reluctantly, Leia nodded again. I suppose you're right. As soon as we get back, I'll tell Mon Mothma that she's going to have to cut down on my assignments. She smiled at Luke. I guess semester break's over, teacher. What? I guess so, Luke said, trying to hide the sudden lump in his throat. Leia noticed it anyway, and for a wonder... what? Misinterpreted. Oh, come on, she chided gently. I'm not that bad a student. Anyway, look on it as good practice. After all, someday you'll have to teach all this to the twins, too. I know, Luke said softly. Good, Han said. That's settled, then. I'm heading up. See you later. Bye, Leia said. Now, she turned to give 3PO a critical look. Let's see what we can do about all this goop. Leaning back in his seat, Luke watched her tackle the hardened webbing, a familiar hollow pain in the pit of his stomach. I took it upon myself, Ben Kenobi had said about Darth Vader, to train him as a Jedi. I thought I could instruct him just as well as Yoda. I was wrong. The words echoed through Luke's mind all the way back to Coruscant. That's oddly prophetic when you think about it. Seriously, all of the chapters have been on the right side. Even though this page is perfectly good. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Anyway, for those of you that haven't seen... Oh, Dying Light's finished. Dang it. For those of you that haven't seen The Force Awakens, I encourage you to go see it. For those of you that have already read this book, perhaps, or have theories on it, although Disney has rebooted the continuity of Star Wars, a lot of things seem to be coming back from the Legends continuity. Everything in the Legends universe it's an alternate reality. So these are still canon. It's just not the Disney canon. So keep that in mind. But a lot of things you'll see in The Force Awakens happen in books such as this one. Not its sequel. And I'm hoping that we'll get to see something somewhere about Mara Jade. I won't say too much about her. I don't think she really plays that important a role in this book or even the next two. But if I can find books that take place somewhat after this one, I might continue reading them too for the channel. I want to build up my Star Wars book collection. And I think a great way to do that would be to get all of the current Disney books that are out right now, such as Aftermath. I have this one here. It's Star Wars: The Rise of the Empire, featuring the novels Star Wars Tarkin and Star Wars: A New Dawn, and 3 all-new short stories. Now, these are all in the new continuity. And what else? Star Wars Aftermath is one book that I should read next. I think once I'm finished with this series, the Thrawn trilogy. I'll read Aftermath next. Now, there's a certain reason behind it, and I won't go into details about it, but I'm really looking forward to getting and reading that book. And there's actually a love story that was recently released. It's called... Oh, shoot, what was it? The Lost something. I'll find it. It's up at my store, oddly enough, so maybe I can pick it up when I go up there to get my W-2. I might read that in tandem with Eclipse once I get it, so that we can see two different love stories, and we can compare them in real time. Let me know what you guys think. I promise, as soon as I can get the book, I will read it. I hope you guys can forgive me, and I'm sorry that I took 2 days off without giving you an explanation, but hey, it happens. Until next time, goodbye everybody.